everybody. We're really glad you're joining us today for our conversation at Small Church Leadership. Our conversation today is around delayed fatigue, and I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. If it's your first time joining us for one of these conversations, my name is James Tripp, and I pastor a small church in Ontario, Canada, where we're really pushing the envelope to grow and to learn what we can do within a small church context. So if you're a small church pastor, thanks for being with us today. I'm excited to have a friend of mine, Troy Matchett, who pastors in a different part of the nation, a different province altogether, and he's joining us for today's call. Maybe you can just shout him out as he jumps into the call right now. Hey, Troy, really glad you're here, buddy.
Hey, my man, how are you?
Good, good. So, hey, today we're talking about delayed fatigue, and just like you, Troy, I survived COVID, and so many of the people who are watching also survived COVID. And we're still breathing, we're still living, we're still kicking, and we made it. We were champions. We lived. Our church has survived, maybe barely. We have less money, less volunteers, and maybe even less happiness. But we survived. We're coming into the next season, and I don't know about you, but I'm tired.
I think we should say delayed, not delayed, but we should say survived COVID. It should be in
Yeah,
COVID.
survived.
Yes.
Survived COVID. Yeah, that's probably true. But at the end of the day, I think what's true though is that I'm tired. And I'll tell you, Troy, I didn't notice I was tired until maybe about 3 weeks ago. I just thought to myself, I'm worn out.
Yep.
People are starting to get on my nerves.
What?
Yeah, church people are starting to get on my nerves. And I discovered it wasn't church people. I'm tired. And so I don't know. Do you notice that sort of feeling of like, I'm tired?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, COVID was difficult for everybody, including people in our churches. And when I got through it, I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to plan a bunch of stuff that I've been wanting to do and change this and change that. And during COVID, we canceled a bunch of things that we really wanted to do. So I was like, you know what? We're going to do these things. And then you know what? I found myself actually being too tired to do them.
Right.
And those things I got part way through something. We had 2 weeks out of 4 weeks done, or 1 week out of 4 weeks done. And I had to pull the plug on it. I could not get the mental capacity to carry it through.
Exactly. So I think one of the things that was interesting to me was I didn't realize that it was delayed fatigue until I started talking to another pastor in my community who just in random conversation, we started talking, and I noticed the conversation was very similar. As I talked to him about the things he was experiencing, I realized, oh, I'm in the same world. Like that's my experience. And so I'm not the only guy. So now the question is, what is this that I'm experiencing? And so one of the things I want to talk about today, Troy, are what are the signs of delayed fatigue? Like when we talk about delayed fatigue, what are the signs of that? Like, because if we don't recognize them, I'm not sure we can understand how to deal with them. And so when I think about this was sort of the first one that jumps out to me, and maybe you can think of some too. But the first one that dawned on me was that I've got delayed fatigue because the things I'm normally super passionate about, I am passion low on now.
Right.
Not that I don't want to do them. I mean, I love preaching, but I don't really feel like preaching. Like I love preaching, but you know what, Troy, that 3 week series, I was done with it just after the first 5 minutes of week number 1.
Yeah.
So you know what I'm saying? And so for me, that was a sign. And why do I feel that way? Why am I not passionate about preaching anymore? I've been passionate about preaching for 20 some years, and now I'm like,
I think for me, one of the number one signs that really puts me on alert to know that I'm in delayed fatigue is nothing's ever good enough.
Right.
So like for me, we just did this family service, and from all accounts, from other people, they thought it was great. They thought it was engaging. They thought it was fun. The kids enjoyed it, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And I left feeling blah.
Right. Right.
I can't be trusted to think when I'm delayed fatigue. I can't be trusted to evaluate something.
That's it. That's right.
So
yeah.
The challenge with that is then we can say, well, this wasn't good, we're not going to do it again, but it could have actually been very effective.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think those are both really good. I think the first one there is really a delayed fatigue. My passion for the things I'm passionate about is low. And then the second one is just that my measuring stick is not accurate.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're talking about. Your ability to measure in a reasonable sense is out. What you would be able to evaluate before and be reasonable about now plays on your mind.
Right.
And I think those are both really great examples of delayed fatigue. The other thing that I think is a really great example of delayed fatigue is your frustration and lack of balance.
Yeah.
So for example, when I'm doing well, I'm not finding my family time, work time, and enjoyment time, or just personal pleasure doing things I enjoy out of balance. But when I'm suffering from delayed fatigue, I run the risk of I'm putting more hours into work and getting less satisfaction. I have less time at home, and I'm less satisfied because I'm not spending as much time with the family, and so my balance is out.
Yes.
And I'm not enjoying any of my time because my time of personal enjoyment doing the things I love doing has been removed or limited or set way back. And so my measuring, my ability to balance my time is off.
Yeah.
Because like you say, if I can't measure well what I'm doing, then I'm going to try to overdo it to get it back into balance.
If they go, if I just work harder, work longer, work faster, this is going to be better. And then
exactly.
You do that, but you can't measure if it's better or not.
Yeah.
You're just like,
exactly.
I worked harder at it. It's got to be better. Sometimes that's the only way we know out of a hole.
That's right. So I'm just curious for those who are watching, I would encourage you, what signs of delayed fatigue are you facing? You can just post a comment below. Hey, what are the things that you're noticing that you're just like, I feel like this is delaying me. I feel like I notice it in this area of my life. Maybe it's in time balance. Maybe it's in my ability to measure the success or whatever success means, but the evaluate whatever I just did, whether it be the last sermon I preached, the next event I'm preparing, my most recent board meeting or committee meeting. Maybe it's those things. Whatever it is, maybe it's the passion level for whatever it is you do as part of your role. You're just not as passionate about it anymore. One of the pastors I was talking to, Troy, said he loves study. He actually loves to study.
Right.
And he goes, he's not even interested in studying. He goes, I don't want to sit and study. He goes, I love study.
Yeah.
He goes, but I'm not interested. And he's a highly academic guy. So coming from him, I was like, oh boy, if you don't want to study, we're all in trouble.
We're all in trouble.
Yeah.
I think the other thing, you touched on it as a joke at the beginning, but I think we just become less, I speak for myself, become less tolerant of people.
Yes.
And the hard thing about that is we don't show that most times to people at work or on our team.
Right.
It ends up coming out at home.
Right.
Because we've expelled all the capital that we have. And so then we go home, we have no more words, no more engagement to give because we're emotionally or physically or whatever bankrupt.
We're spent.
They say.
Yeah. So I think Troy, when we talk about delayed fatigue, we probably all can understand where we might have some of that, whether in one area or all three areas or all four areas. But the question I that kind of leads me to is delayed fatigue is probably momentary or seasonal.
Right.
Right now I feel like I'm recovering from a season when I was on demand, high demand, switch moved to, Now that's over and I'm exhausted. So the question becomes, how do I make sure that delayed fatigue doesn't turn into a burnout? Like, how do I make sure that it doesn't turn into something where I'm like, okay, I'm not recovering, I'm going downhill, and I'm actually becoming my own worst enemy, as opposed to addressing that very thing that probably I could turn the corner on if I could identify it. So, where do you think delayed fatigue turns into burnout? At what point do you think it becomes a real challenge that has moved from the elementary or early stage to the you've got a problem?
Yeah, I think one of the issues is, as pastors, is that we get caught up in seasons. So we're like, well, it's busy because it's Easter. You know what I mean? Or it's busy because it's Christmas.
Yeah.
oh, don't worry, it's gonna be better after this month. But the truth is, all of those seasons, we used to do, a couple weeks at Christmas. Now it's a 6-week series. Like, everything runs together now.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the issue about moving from delayed fatigue to burnout can happen. And it can happen, I think, quickly because we're not honest with ourselves.
Right.
And we don't listen to the people around us.
Yeah. No, I would tend to agree. I think the other challenge with burnout is recognizing my delayed fatigue doesn't have an exit strategy.
Right.
So burnout happens when my delayed fatigue isn't addressed. So, like I've got some delayed fatigue right now. I'm tired. I'm worn out. So if I choose to do something about it now, I can have an on-ramp to be healthier.
Right.
Or I can ignore it, work like a champ, get everything back to the way it's supposed to be, and then discover now I'm burnt out and I actually don't have the mental ability, the capacity to actually self-correct. So for me, I recognize that I've got some delayed fatigue. It's like it didn't happen in the season, but now I'm feeling it because the season of crazy, the 2-year, if you will, crazy is now calmed. And now I got to find out how to find balance again. And I think this is really important. Let me just draw in on this a little bit. This, I think, is even more difficult for a small church leader or pastor because they've actually carried so much more weight. If you've had a big team, maybe that has been spread out a little bit more. But if you're in a small country church and you're the one-man show, preach, praise, sing, and lead worship, and probably do the custodial work on Thursday, then COVID really burnt you because now it was even harder to make those pivots. So that fatigue is even that much richer now that people have come back a little bit and we're starting to find a balance again. So delayed fatigue into burnout, I think, is addressing that moment before you get to the point where you don't know how to address it. So for me, using my example, for me right now, as we come into this next season, I'm saying, hey, I'm going to make sure I take my day off every week for the next 6 weeks. I'm going to make sure that maybe I bank off an afternoon a week that I wouldn't have normally to just be with family. I'm going to make sure that I leave the office at this time every day, even if there's more work to do. I'm cutting myself off at this time, and it's going to be my focus.
You know what I've noticed about pastors? Is this. Most of us can't be trusted with those decisions on our own, right? So we have another full-time staff here, and I was meeting with them the other day. Me and her, we can't be trusted to leave on time, to manage our time, to be faithful in taking our days off, to not work in the evenings. And so we have to be willing to ask each other and ask the people around us, how do you think I'm doing?
Yeah.
And what's interesting about the delayed fatigue thing is probably in the last 3 months, more than ever, I've asked people just from church, they'll see me say, hey, how you doing? And I never thought much about it until I mentioned it to my wife, and she says, that's because they can tell you're not doing well.
Right.
We have to trust the people around us because we can't be trusted.
It's good. Yeah, that's true.
A deal with, like, I can say, well, I'm going to leave here at 4:30 every day. A deal with myself is not a deal. I've proven that to be true over and over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? So that brings us to the next question is, how do we overcome it?
Right.
And you had mentioned, leaving the office a certain time of day. Make sure you take your holidays.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
I remember one year, a few years ago, probably 5 or 6 years ago, I had two weeks holidays left at the end of the year, and we were in a board meeting, and I was like, hey, I didn't take these 2 weeks for holidays. And they were like, well, what we'll do is we'll buy these 2 weeks from you this year, but we'll never do it again. So, and I was like, why? And they're like, because we want you to use your holidays.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Right? So ever since then, I was like, well, if I'm not going to get them bought out, I'm going to try my best to use them. Right?
Might as well, right?
We got to use our holidays. We got to take our
Absolutely.
days off, use our Sabbath. We got to
Yeah.
remember this. I said this to a friend yesterday. If we drop dead today, someone else is going to be sitting in this chair by the end of the week.
Oh yeah, we are replaceable.
Figuring it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that's really good. So some how do I overcome fatigue? First of all, I got to recognize that some of the things we've talked about earlier, those are true of me too. And if those are true of me, I've probably got some delayed fatigue. Then the second thing I've really got to do is I've got to decide what am I going to do about it. You raise a good point. I can't be trusted on my own. So I've got to set up a system, whether it's another pastor, whether it's a friend of mine, whether it's my spouse, whether it's somebody in the office who can call me. I'm their boss, but they can call me on, you need to rest, like get out of here. And so I need to set some parameters. My days off, maybe an extra afternoon off, maybe taking a 2-hour lunch break so I can spend time with the family over the season when they're at home, or maybe making sure I have an extra little time with the family, that kind of stuff. That's all stuff that I think really helps.
And here's an idea we're doing this year, and I'll just put this out for us, for our moms who are listening, which might be the only people listening. But we did for July, we're doing a church-wide pause.
Yeah.
Where we're not doing any programming, any meetings, anything. We're just, and I told people, take time, go on vacation with your family, make up for some of the time that you've lost, get some rest. If you're in the area, please come to church on Sunday morning. But other than that, and the reason I did that for them, but also for us. Why? Because we can't be trusted. We'll be like, oh, what's this? It's a barbecue. It's just this. It's just that. It's just this.
Right.
But we've got a month where a couple things can happen. We can rest. Our volunteers can rest. Okay. That can happen. But everybody listening to this will know what it's like to go on vacation. You work 60 plus hours the week before to get prepared to go on vacation. And then you come back and you're 30 hours behind.
Right.
This way, we can walk out of the office at 5 o'clock on a Friday, and there's nothing to plan for. Sunday's taken care of, and we can actually have a vacation.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me add one other thought to the delayed fatigue conversation around how do I overcome it. And here's another thing that I think as pastors and leaders we need to think about. And I would challenge you, if you're a pastor of a small church, or any church for that matter, actually, your people are also suffering from delayed fatigue. And so historically, we might not have thought to shut things down for a week or two because we thought that would be a measure of failure. But in this case, we actually may be doing a spiritual discipline for our church people by forcing them to take a break, and forcing them to pause because they actually need it too. So that may be of value to say to the church family, friends, I know that we're all tired from a very long season, and part of my leadership or part of our leadership is to say to you, we want you to pause. And so maybe it's helping them to understand it as well, because we as leaders understand delayed fatigue, but our people don't understand the delayed fatigue they're facing. I mean, families had kids at home for a long period of time when they weren't used to it. Families had to change jobs, find other work. They had to figure out if they were going to have enough money, all the things that went on with it. So they also have their own delayed fatigue. So I think we're actually teaching a spiritual thing, which is a rest, which is a biblical principle, rest. But then we're also helping people to understand why it's important for them. And if we demonstrate it as leaders, we're going to be better off for it. So I think the conversation around delayed fatigue is so important. I think it's valuable. And pastors and leaders who are watching, I would encourage you to consider the signs of delayed fatigue. Ask yourself the question, do I suffer from some of these things? Maybe read some of the posts other people have made around delayed fatigue. Do some of those ring a bell? And don't be delayed in actually responding to the very thing you're feeling, because it's a very fine line between delayed fatigue and burnout. Delayed fatigue is, I know how I can change it. Burnout is, I'm so deep, I don't know how to get out. And so we don't want you to do that. Thanks, Troy, for being a part of the conversation today. Thanks for hanging out with me for a few minutes. as we just chat about something that I think pastors and leaders everywhere are either facing or recognizing or trying to overcome. So thanks for hanging out today.
Well, it was my pleasure, and I hope that the conversation is meaningful and it gives us a step in the right direction.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Hey, friends, the conversation today hopefully was helpful to you. We would love to get some feedback from you. Small church leadership is designed to help you with the things that you see, the things that you don't, and help you take a step forward in your church context. We're happy to help with things from technical issues to how to install, to finding what the best option is, to working on a budget with your church needs, resourcing equipment, et cetera, et cetera. So if there's any question you have about small church leadership, we're happy to point you in the right direction, give you some feedback, or just encourage you. Maybe you want to invite somebody to watch this conversation today. It was great to have Troy with us, and we look forward to future conversations. Thanks for being with us today.